Good morning, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to join us. I see the numbers going up for participants. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll get started shortly. Good morning again. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We are excited to see so many people. And we know we still have a few more trickling in, but we are all here today for the info session for the New York Land Opportunity Program, or the NYLOP as we call it. We're going to be kicking off in just a few minutes. I will introduce some of our speakers this morning. We're here to answer questions and give you information about the program. All right, so I think that is it. We are at 72 participants. Once again, thank you so much for joining. My name is Rondalee Davis. I am a senior program officer here at LISC New York, on the housing team. And I would like to introduce and hand it over to my director, Miss Monica Dean.
Good morning, everyone. So it's great to have all of you with us this morning. We're looking forward to sharing with you more information about LISC New York's New York Land Opportunity Program and this request for expression of interest for participation in our 2025 cohort. And so you already met Rondalee Davis, who's the Senior Program Officer. You will also hear from Rashida Gilges, who is our LISC New York intern this afternoon. Next slide. And so we always like to begin with briefly sharing a little bit of information about LISC, about our mission, and about the organization. And so those of you who may not be familiar with LISC, we have offices all across the country, a little over 40 offices, and we also have a rural office. And our mission has always been and will continue to be to work with residents and our partners across the country that help us forge resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity across the country, where we are committed to creating great places for people to live, work, and play, do business, and most importantly, raise their families. And so here at LISC, we again are committed to building these communities of opportunities for all people, grounded in the core belief that fostering a sense of belonging is vital to achieving the shared prosperity that we have. And again, one of the ways that we do that is through our programs that we offer, similar to the New York Land Opportunity Program, which is designed and implemented in, all the aspects of the work that we do. Every program is where we work to uphold the dignity and well-being of our residents across the offices and communities that we serve, regardless of their background or where they live in the country. And so again, with our partners, some who are joined with us on this information session this morning, help us to actively remove barriers to economic mobility. And we again have been doing this for over 40 years now. We'll continue to be able to support these efforts. And so the challenge, that this program is addressing is that many faith-based organizations and mission-driven organizations that serve in their local communities who provide a myriad of different services, a lot of these organizations have underutilized property, and, they have been, wanting to develop on this property that they own, with an affordable housing component, but they oftentimes lack the resources and just the capacity to do this on their own. And so, again, the New York Land Opportunity Program, which we refer to as NYLOP, was specifically designed to try to address this challenge. And so we have been doing this work, offering this program since 2016 now at LISC, and we have been able to modify it over the years. And since 2022, we had the capacity to expand this program from a New York City-based program to a statewide program. And so, again, we are interested and committed to working with faith-based organizations and mission-driven organizations across New York State, again, who own property and again have a desire to develop on the property that they own. And so again, we do this, we provide technical and financial support. Our goal for this 2025 cohort is to select a minimum of 10 organizations, again, to help them through this process. Which is to help them select and identify a master development partner to really help them bring these projects of theirs to fruition. And so, I'm also happy to share that some of the organizations that we have supported in the past few years have been from New York City, Mount Vernon, New York, Syracuse, and Lackawanna, right outside of Buffalo. And so, again, every year we are increasing our capacity. Again, if you have an organization within New York State and you meet the criteria, which you will hear a little bit more about, we want you to submit an application in response to this RFEI. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Rashida Gilgis, who is going to walk you through and just share some high-level bullet points about the program. Rashida?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So NYLOP aims to support faith-based institutions or mission-driven organizations interested in using their real estate to develop housing for residents across New York State. The program will provide technical assistance to selected FBOs or MDOs, such as development consultants, who are able to provide one-on-one technical assistance, architects who will be able to create development concept plans with buy-in, and attorneys who are there to ensure that FBOs, MDOs understand partnerships and perform legal due diligence. Now I will hand it over to Mr. Jimmy Miller from Sincere Consulting, who will talk more about the development consultants. Jimmy?
Good afternoon, all. Again, my name is Jim Miller. I am with the Sincere Consulting, and my role is to provide development consulting as part of a team consisting of our attorney and our architect. So could you go to the next slide, please? Again, my role consists of 4 different components. The first part being a meeting with the respondents and coordinating the review and selection of the consultants. So I will be working again with the New York LISC team and Goldstein and Hall, and then we will evaluate your responses, and then we will select the most qualified respondents. And step 2, again, as Ms. Dean said, we hope to have up to 10 MDOs or FBOs as part of the 2025 cohort. And then we will do a survey to determine your capacity and your goals and objectives. And once we develop that survey, we will then be able to develop an action plan for you and conduct one-on-one meetings. In addition to that, we'll also conduct a visioning session as part of phase 3. That visioning session, again, will enable us to narrow down your vision into concrete, achievable goals and objectives, and then work with our other development team to prepare a concept plan. And so the concept plan will then be a general concept of what is achievable in terms of zoning, capabilities, capacity, and financing. Typically, we develop multiple concept schemes with our architect, and then we will choose with you the most optimal concept plan. Once we have a concept plan, the fourth and final step of my role is to take that concept plan and to develop an RFQ. The purpose of the RFQ is for us to find a qualified co-developer whose vision and mission are compatible with yours. And then from that, we will enter into an exclusivity agreement. And from that, we will enter into an MDA, again, hopefully to bring that project to fruition.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Now I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Andrew Knox from ESKW Architects, who will talk more on the architect's role.
Hi, I'm a partner at ESKW Architects. Our firm's been around in various names since the 1970s. We work almost exclusively in New York State and with housing mostly, and with community facility, not-for-profits, et cetera. We have a lot of experience with the technical and the design side of affordable housing. Next slide, please. What our role is and what we do with everybody is we work very closely with Sincere, basically, and you, the group, to put together drawings that can describe what you're trying to build and evaluate what you want to build against the zoning and the local legal restrictions and regulations for your site. So traditionally, or basically what we do is once we get one of your sites, we do an overview of what's sort of on paper, what's allowed to be built there. Once we have a little bit of a knowledge about that, and we also do a little bit of a legal research if there are encumbrances or, you know, hazmat type of hazardous material kind of issues there. So we can understand what all the issues are that are affecting your site. We then meet with you and go over what your goals are, what you would like to do, what you'd like to have built. And we also take a look at the site to sort of, because every site is specific, and every piece of architecture, everything that you build needs to be very unique to your site. Based on what we learn from you, we then develop a series of test fits, a couple of different options. For example, you might want to have senior housing. You might want to have family housing. You might want to put a new sanctuary in part of your building, or some other community facility in part of your building, a mixed-use building. And we put together a couple of different options. Then we meet again, and we go through the pros and cons. And all of the times we do this, we also do this with Sincere in order to also evaluate what is really feasible, what in terms of funding and that sort of side. So our goal, our job really is to take what your ideas are, put them through a filter of what is buildable and what is achievable. And then in the end, after we go through a couple of these test fits, we'll then select one with you, obviously, and modify it, select one that we want, and then we'll sort of create a presentation so that this idea can be presented to various development and funding agencies, and can be used as the basis for developing an actual project. Next, or next, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Now I'll hand it over to Mr. Gregory Kimball from Goldstein Hall, who will speak more on the attorney's role.
Hi, my name is Gregory Kimball. I'm an associate at Goldstein Hall. And as you saw in the previous slide, I work with and under Jason LeBate, who is a partner at Goldstein Hall. We are a firm that works
I think we might have lost Gregory.
and hello? I think I
Gregory,
clicked out.
we lost you for a little while. We lost you at Affirm. So if you wanna one more time for us, no problem.
Sure, I'm gonna turn my video off. Maybe that will help. Yeah, so we are a firm that works in the nonprofit. I'm sorry, in the real estate space. We also work a lot with nonprofits and faith-based organizations, both in real estate and in the corporate space. So I'll just go very quickly over our role. Um, we have a preliminary due diligence, which includes conducting background checks, reviewing corporate structures, and performing title reviews and preliminary zoning analysis. And that all of that work is basically to vet the projects before we get to the next process, which is the final due diligence review, which is once projects are selected to go forward. We help to identify potential legal and financial structures for working with potential partners, potential development partners, performing zoning analysis, reviewing and advising on exclusivity agreements between those partnerships, and reviewing specific project-specific RFPs as necessary to support the LISC staff. So our role is really just to make sure that the partnerships are structurally sound, and to identify and flag any legal issues that might be existing or might come up throughout the process.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Rondely. So to you now.
Thanks, Rashida. So just a quick overview of some of the program requirements you guys are seeing on the screen right now. So for every successful applicant to the NYLOP program, you have to be an incorporated nonprofit corporation. You have to have ownership, and this is very important. You have to have ownership or a long-term leasehold for the vacant underutilized property that you have the intention of applying or putting housing on. You have to have a proven track record of providing services to your community. You must have the organizational capacity to assist in the search for the master development partner. This is important to bringing your program and your building to completion. It's important that you would not have already identified a master developer partner or architect that you're currently working with. And you must agree to retain ownership of the property throughout the entirety of the NYLOP. Here on this screen, we have an overview of the timeline. So currently, we have released the RFEI, and we are, conducting our info session today. If you have questions for us after today, you can send us an email to nylop@lisc.org. Once again, that's nylop@lisc.org by the 24th. We will publish these questions on our website, on the LISC New York website by the 28th of February. And then we expect that all applications should be submitted by the end of the day on March 6th. During the period from March 11th to March 14th, we will be conducting brief interviews with our applicants. And then we are hoping to have all determinations sent to all applicants by the 18th of March. And then the fun stuff. On the 25th of March, we have our in-person kickoff. And this is going to be in Harlem. We have decided on a site and we are, planning the event. And at that time, all the current cohort members, as well as, past participants of the NYLOP program, our other applicants, our, community that supports this program, we all come out, sort of like welcome this new group into the fold. And then finally, on the 2nd of April, we will have the RFEI application virtual orientation. So we'll meet again in this format, and we'll sort of, delve into what it really is that we will, be working on with the architect, the development consultant, and the attorneys over what might be a year, 18-month period. Other than that, that is the, all the information we have to share today. If you have questions, I see there are 4 questions already in the Q&A box. If you have more questions, please add them to the box. If you would like to ask your question, come off mute and ask your question, you may raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. I see that we have one person already who has a question. Other than that, yes, we're here for the next little while to answer any questions that you guys might have. So go ahead and put those in the chat. Sorry, not the chat, in the Q&A box, so that we might answer them. And then ask to unmute if you'd like to ask your question over the mic. All righty. So the first question we have, I see there's a question here from Mr. Yeva. Yes, we will share the slides and the recording to all registrants. The recording will go up on our website. I want to say next week. And we will also send an email to anyone who registered for the webinar and could not make it, or who was here in attendance with us today. We also have another question here from Hope Development. I hope I'm saying that right. It says, how do developers who look to participate get identified and chosen to work with the awarded organizations? This is a great question, and I would love if Jimmy or Monica would answer this one.
Yeah, I'll defer to Jimmy.
Okay, as we talked about earlier, my role is 4-step process, and part of that process is to work with our team to develop a concept plan. And the concept plan would be part of an RFQ that LISC New York will issue in conjunction with our cohort members. And that is the methodology to which we will select a development partner. And so those who may have an interest in being a development partner, again, we have the timetable we'll go over shortly. But again, we will be issuing an RFQ, at which you'll be able to respond. And there should be, at that point in time, 10 cohort members. And you can determine which of those cohort members you would like to become a partner with, but that's how we would be selected.
Right. And I'll just add to that to reiterate that the cohort participants make the decisions. Our partners and experts here are here to guide and offer advice, but as part of the co-developers process to select and identify a co-developer for the cohort participants during the interview process, as Mr. Miller just referenced, the cohort participants at the end of it get to decide the co-developer that they would like to work with on bringing their projects to fruition. Next question.
So we did have a question from our participants, Mr. I cannot see your last name. I think it's Chakeem. I'm so sorry. The chat. But if you could unmute yourself and ask your question. I see that your mic, you would ask to be unmuted.
Yeah, my question was answered. It was a developer question. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. I see another one here from Ms. Adiola Karim Sani. If you want to unmute and ask your question.
Good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, the target of LISC through NYLOP is to provide technical assistance and financial support. It seems that today's presentation is silent about on the financial support. Could you please elaborate or put more insight on this aspect of your target? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That question was about the financial support that's provided to the participants of the program. So Monica.
Okay. Yeah, I can answer that. So great question. Thanks for the question. And so LISC New York, as part of the program, we provide all the services. And so no cohort participant as has to cover or pay for any of the technical assistance. So as an example, we are paying for the architects to provide your concept plans. We're paying for the development consultant. We're paying the attorney fees as part of this program. And, as an example, when the architects conduct the zoning analysis, when the law firm conducts all of the background checks and the screenings, we pay for all of the services that you are receiving from our partners. And so I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So the next question here from an anonymous attendee: can property be built to house farmers? Andrew, can you take that one?
Yes, yes, you can build for farmers. The question is, you can build for any sort of affordable housing that's available. The question is, are they programs within the city, within the state, that specifically fund farming affordable housing as opposed to others? I believe there are some, or there've been some that have been put together. But in terms of there are limitations, and this is really a little bit more of a Jimmy question on how much screening you can have for which group of people you have. So for example, it's possible to do funding for seniors or for vets or for certain categories like that. And I believe there is one upstate for farmers or farming type ones. Jimmy, do you have any insight on that?
I think again is program specific. There are some programs like LIHTC, tax credits that require the occupants to be more general in nature. But there are programs that maybe target toward the farmers. So in addition to figuring out your concept plan and your due diligence, we also help you make sure that whatever your concept is, that there are programs out there that are available that we can use to fund the program. So that's part of what we do. So if you say you want to serve farmers, we have to make sure that it can be done legally. We have to make sure that there are resources out there to build that project. So that's what we do. That's what our team does.
Thanks, Jimmy. So we're getting a few questions about where we can find the application. So the application can be found on the NYLOP page on the LISC New York website. The last slide on this presentation also has a QR code that you guys can scan for the application. We will also be sending out these slides, like I said. So when you get these slides, you can scan the QR code on the last slide if you'd like to be able to access the application. So I see a few of those questions in the chat, in the QR box.
You want to put the QR code up now?
I'll put the QR code up in just one moment.
Okay, I can continue. Jimmy, can you just briefly answer this next question? What does long-term lease mean?
We're looking for at least 30 years more. And again, that lease may need to be longer depending on the funding sources. Some funding sources and some investors may want at least as long as 99 years. So at least 30 years to meet the definition of ownership, but it could be as long as 99 years, depending on the funding source and investor.
Thank you. I see a question here. Are there specific requirements on the type of housing that would be developed through the program? So this is a question for either Jimmy or for Andrew.
Let me take a stab at that. We will take your vision, and your vision will be to serve elderly, families, a person with disabilities, veterans. So you will tell us what your vision is, and then we will work with you to refine that vision. So that's what we will do. So if you want, so housing types as well, home ownership, co-op, condos. You again will tell us what you want, and then we will help you refine that, and also make sure between Goldstein and Hall and our architect and myself, make sure that that can be done within the zoning constraints. And again, I want to reiterate, make sure that there's funding available to fund that dream. So we want to turn your dream into a reality. So that's what we do. So all that is part of our process of taking your vision and turning it into a concept, but a concept that can actually be built and funded.
Thank you. The next question is, how long will the process take from the time you are selected to the time you complete the project? That's a great one.
That's a great one. Process is very complicated. I think Ms. Dean said earlier, someone said earlier, it may take us 18 months to get to a place where we would have a project that is feasible and developable. And that's assuming there are no snags. But it's not unusual for a complex development process from here to 36 months is not unusual to get a project that's fundable. And I think that's pretty much the sweet spot, 36 months to get to a point where a project is definitely fundable and feasible.
And then it's a year, often 2 years to actually get it built, depending
Right.
on how big the project is and complexity of it.
So it's not an overnight, it's not an
Yeah.
overnight sensation by no means. So we want to make sure you understand that this is a long-term investment on LISC New York's part and your part. So 3 to 5 years is not unusual.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. Another question we have here is, what if an organization is currently working with a general contractor to restore and preserve the historic property? Also, well, this is a two-part question. I'll let that one go first. So I think this question goes towards requirements. So if they're currently working with a general contractor, what does that mean for the requirements that we have outlined for the program?
So, yeah, Alice, great question. So it sounds like you're already in the process, and this project is underway. If you've already selected and you're working with a GC on preservation or restoring this property, and if that is the case, that particular project would not be a good applicant for this program, because the idea for NYLOP is that the organizations are in need of the technical assistance supports, which includes going through concept plans and working with the organizations to select and identify co-developers who will then identify and select GCs to work with them on their project. So if in fact this organization is already underway with construction on a project, then that would not make this project and or organization an eligible applicant for this program. Is the grant solely for repurposing property as residential? No.
All right.
No, it is not.
So the next question is, what is the minimum land size that the program can work with? What is the minimum land size that the program can work with?
Andrew, and then Jimmy.
Yeah, the minimum size, we've actually done some very small ones. I think it was 16 units, something like that. And that was in the city. The issue that you run into, and this is where it goes over to Jimmy, is what is fundable? You know what I mean? How big does the project need to be in order for there to be funding for it? So that's it. We've done things as small as 16. I don't think it's gone the next step yet, is my understanding with that particular project. Usually they're larger than that, but Jimmy, I put it to you because you know more about where the funding is coming from and how big they'll support, or how small they'll support.
I think we have the concept of economies of scale. So the 16-unit project and those projects are problematic for two reasons. Most of our projects that are residential will involve definitely public support and probably low-income housing tax credits as well. So I think you need somewhere in the neighborhood of, again, upstate, downstate, every place is different, but I'm going to say definitely 40 units is where you want to start, and definitely anything less than 30 units is highly problematic and probably isn't a good candidate because you still have to pay all those costs that we talked about, and those costs have to get spread over 30 units rather than 40 units, so it makes it very hard. So I'm going to again say 40 units is where I think we begin to look at optimal size. Larger than that in New York City, developers are looking for 100, 150 units in New York City. We've learned that from experience. So again, upstate, downstate are slightly different, but in New York City, definitely 100 units. And some of the co-developers want even more than that, 150 units. So that's our experience.
Thank you. So we have a question here. It says, once the master developer partner agreement is executed and the other work is completed, how does the faith-based organization pay for the applications for capital and operating funding for affordable housing?
I'll take a stab at that one. The RFQ that goes out is very clear that the co-developer must pay all pre-development expenses, which are substantial. So we make sure with our team that the co-developer has the financial wherewithal to do that. Again, you're talking about a very long period of time, a lot of capital outlay. So that capital outlay is to be borne by the co-developer, the pre-development expenses.
Thank you. This one is just a point of clarity. So the question is, the context is that you have a church parking lot, a community center, and possibly a garden. Do you have to have the actual building for the program, or can the parking lot be developed?
No, that's what we want.
Yeah.
You're a perfect candidate. You're a perfect candidate. Please put your application in. We'll talk to you about it. No, what the idea is that we take open land that you have that you want to put affordable housing or you want to put housing into, and we will help you do that. And if there may be space also to put some sort of community facility in that as well, depending on how big the property is, et cetera, et cetera. So you're our person. Please submit. Did I get that right, Jimmy?
Yes,
Yes.
we love empty spaces. Yes.
Yeah.
So this next question was asking about artist residency. What about housing for artists? Can we allow that kind of housing? Similar to the question about farmers.
Again, we have housing that's designed to serve a whole range of populations. So there's nothing that I think of statutorily that would prohibit you from that being your constituent that you like to serve. Again, I'd reiterate what we said earlier, that we'd have to make sure that there are programs there, even between the state and the locality, federal government. We have to make sure that there are programs there that we can use to fund that activity. So again, we want your ideas. We want them to be broad. Our job is to take those ideas and make sure that they're feasible. And and that's what we do. So nothing inherently wrong with doing artist housing, but can we find something to fund it?
Okay. So we've had some questions about ownership. I'm just going to group them all in one. So there is a question regarding, can you build on, or can someone apply for the program if they don't currently own the land, but they're in the negotiation process?
Ms. Dean?
So the short answer would be that that applicant would not be a good candidate. One of the program requirements is that you have to either own the property or have a long-term leasehold of the property. If you're confident that the negotiations will close by the time the application has been submitted, absolutely submit the application. But by March the 6th, if they have not been completed, then your application would most likely be denied just because you do not have land that you own or have a long-term leasehold on.
So
So I hope that answers your question.
thank you, Monica. Sorry about that. So this next question is about the term leasehold. Is the term leasehold the same as ground lease? What is the difference or the similarities? Jimmy?
Greg? Gregory?
Yeah, this is Jason's section. I'm not well versed in the ground lease portion. But that would be something that we'd be able to help with generally throughout the project. There will be someone on our team to help with that.
Isn't it conceptually though, long-term lease, whether it's a ground lease or a whatever, it means that, and what Jimmy was saying, that they really want 30 years minimum. That's sort of my understanding on a conceptual basis.
So when I use ground lease, I'm pretty simple. You have the ground of the dirt, the underlying ground, and then upon that you build an improvement. So if you don't have the property and you can acquire property fee simple, which means you own it outright, or you can get a leasehold interest in this property, And the leasehold interest in this property needs to be at least a 30-year leasehold interest, as compared to a fee simple, you just own it outright. So leasehold interest of 30 years. So yes, when I'm speaking of ground lease, I am speaking of ground lease / leasehold interest, and it needs to be a long-term one. It can't be for a year or two, because the funding sources and investors are going to want a leasehold interest in that property for a much longer period of time, because the funding that you're going to get usually it's going to be if it's from the state or the city, it's going to be 30 or 40 requirements on that funding. And if you get a loan from a bank, the loans are going to be 30 or 40 years. So that leasehold interest needs to be commensurate with that funding and those other financing sources. So yes, leasehold interest in the land for at least 30 years or more, up to 99 years possible.
Thanks, Jimmy. And just to mention that all these questions that are being asked will also appear in the Q&A document that we will release on our website on the 28th. So that will be there for reference as well.
I can answer Julie's question. How much money do you need for upfront to start the project if you get selected? So Julie, we pay for all of the upfront costs as you're in the program. When you select your co-developer, the co-developers, there's an expectation that they will cover pre-development costs. And so you don't need a penny if you're selected in our program. And so the team here today, from ESKW, from Sincere, from Goldstein Hall, will provide, all those services, take care of your organization's ideas and project goals, and turn them into actual plans, issue RFQ or RFP to help identify and select a co-developer. Where are the expectations that, the co-developers will cover most of the, if not all, the pre-development costs? It's, oftentimes what we put into most of the exclusivity agreements. Did I miss anything, Jimmy or Greg?
That's it.
We've had a request from Ms. Sophia Rice, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, thank you. It just took me a minute to find the unmute button. How much funding is typically available for these types of projects, and how much have to come out of your participant's pocket? Or are they responsible for finding or funding?
So I think we've had this question in many forms. So for the program, the NYLOP costs nothing for
I'm not talking about how much
part.
is it for the project. Let's just say I get it selected. I have my idea and the project is $1 million. Are you saying that there's funding to fund the whole $1 million, or is there some costs that have to come out of my pocket as well to help fund any gaps that I cannot get in funding?
Let me take a stab at that again. Get you to the point where you select a co-developer, you will obviously you will have to commit your staff time, and that'll be considerable staff time because we're talking about multiple years. So your staff time, you'll have to commit that. You'll have to pay for your staff time, but our time you won't have to pay for. You won't have to pay for the zoning analysis, the due diligence, the legal analysis, the organization documentation, incorporating you, and the concept drawings will be paid for by LISC. And then you will have a co-developer, and the co-developer will pay for the construction documents and environmental reviews, appraisals, and then they and us will help you identify the funding sources. The funding sources will be what we call the capital stack. I don't want to get too old women here, but the resources, if the project is $25 million, and then the team, and especially your co-developer, will identify the best sources for that $25 million. And then that co-developer, and with our assistance, will also submit the applications for that $25 million. So the goal is to minimize your cash outlay. So between what we're doing up front and getting a co-developer to spend the other money, if that works well, then your outlay will be your time and your staff time. You'll be working with us. You'll be doing communication with your congressperson and your representatives and your community planning organizations and your localities. You'll be doing all that with us. So you'll be spending a certain amount of time on your part, but the pre-development expenses should be borne either by us, LISC New York, or by your co-developer. That's how we hope this program works, and that's how it's been working thus far.
Okay, thank you. That was the question. I was just trying to figure out how much out of pocket, but it sounds like you need to have a strong team of staff members that can help you do some legwork as well.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what should that team consist of, and how many hours should they have to contribute towards this project?
Woo. So I can answer that because we've had conversations. Organizations vary, and we know staff capacity or lack thereof is an issue, and so it's part of the orientation, and one of the components of this program in order for the organizations to be successful. There is a commitment that is required, and if I had to estimate, I would say if an organization would have to designate, key staff people who Jimmy and his team can reach out to, who can respond. We're looking at, about 5, hours a week, probably during the first couple of months. Some weeks may vary, but someone who is alert, someone who is responsible for following up and responding to emails. There's going to be a series of meetings required to meet with the architects, with the attorneys. They're going to need documentation on the leadership team, etc. And so, one, having at least one dedicated or two staff people, and thinking about, okay, I need to, plan or anticipate it at minimum of at least about 5 hours a week, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome.
So we have Mr. Tarin Davis, who also has a question. You can unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I just had a question as far as the time frame for the LISC NYLOP program. Is it annual?
I mean, it depends on the cohort. As you've heard, mentioned throughout this session, it takes about 18 months, some 24 months. So we're still working with our 2022 and our 2023 cohorts participants, all of whom by now have almost selected all of their co-developers, all except for one. And so the process continues. And so we just launched the 2025 cohort. We will probably not launch another cohort this year, but that decision will not be made and probably another 5 months from now, depending on where we are and the progress made from this cohort, which will be the largest cohort to date.
Thank you, Monica. So we have a number of questions in the chat about land banks, and I figured we would just take a minute to sort of answer those. So are community land trusts qualified applicants for this program?
What is the question?
Would a community land bank, like a community land trust, would they qualify? Could they, if they're MDO, could they qualify for the NYLOP? They have land and they are mission driven. Do they qualify?
So we work with community land trust. It's currently working with CLT out in Nassau County. And so it depends on the project. And so most land banks are working on multifamily housing. Not a lot of them have the capacity to do multifamily housing. And so we talked about minimum, looking at square feet and number of units that can be built in these spaces. And so my response to that and any questions regarding land banks and land trusts who are considering participating in the program, if you check the boxes and meet the program requirements, apply. We review all the applicants. And so I would just say that, in response to your question.
Okay, and so the second part of the land bank land trust question is, can an organization, like can an MDO partner with a land bank? So they don't have the land, but they are mission driven. How does that work? They don't themselves own it.
You have to have land. If you have to have land, you have to either own land or two, have a long-term leasehold on the land in order to be eligible for participation in the program. You cannot participate if you do not own land. So one of the two has to own land, either the MDO or one of the partners. So the joint ventures are welcome to apply if you want to team up, with another or multiple organizations. But there has to be some land as part of the project.
Can you create a consortium and meet the capacity? So this is a question that speaks to if we have many small plots of land from multiple different MDOs or FBOs, could they create a partnership and then apply?
Yeah, we would definitely review that application. Again, as long as the organization own the property, And they are, you know, joining forces, coming together to do a joint venture to build, you know, property. And then I also want to reiterate that these projects not only include affordable housing, so programmatic spaces are allowed and acceptable as part of NYLOP as well.
All right, so the next group of questions comes from service providers. So if you are and I think we've answered this, but I just want to say to answer it one more time in case, you know, people missed it. If you are a for-profit organization or a contracting firm, how might you respond to the work of NYLOP or the participants of NYLOP who have property for development?
Jermaine, you want to take that one?
You
You can
need
start,
to
Andrew.
be a nonprofit or a faith-based organization. Those are the minimum criteria. So if you were solely a for-profit enterprise, you would not therefore be eligible. You, depending on your capacity, you would be thinking about maybe being a co developer, depending on how large you are. I don't think we would address the question of a private of a for-profit enterprise forming a partnership with a profit. I'm not sure what the answer to that would be. I think that we would have to a team would have to huddle on that and come up with a response.
All right, thank you guys so much. So we are at time. I know that we have a number of open questions. What we will do is collect all questions and we will publish answers to these questions in the document that we will publish on our website on the 28th of this month. We want to thank you guys so much for, you know, being with us this afternoon. Well, now it's afternoon. And we will, if you have any other questions before that period, before the 24th, please just drop them in the NYLOP box. So this is NYLOP, NYLOP at LISC.org. I will drop it in the chat for everybody. And we will answer those questions as well by the 24th.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, thanks everyone for joining us. We will post this PowerPoint presentation. We'll email it to everyone who registered. And again, email us your questions. The questions that we have here, as Rhonda Lee said, we will respond to them and post them on our website. But if you have additional questions, please email them to us so the responses will be included and uploaded on the website by next Friday, February 28th. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, go LISC.